to Dr. Ruth Davidson, who's going to be talking about her research on the 50 years of the Child Poverty Action Group, which will be forthcoming sometime soon.
Just as a sort of quick introduction, having researched CPAG for the past year, they're an organisation that's always been relatively small. You wouldn't believe it if you looked at their archive, which is capacious. And I was very conscious today trying to synthesise it all down into something that was manageable. Because if at any point I'm glossing over stuff really quickly and you want to come back to it, you can pick me up on it, and please feel free to do so, because I could have taken it in numerous directions. I've just sort of focused on the bit that I'm interested in at the moment. So just to give you an overview, for 50 years, Child Poverty Action Group, or CPAG, have been an important, well-regarded and arguably not so well understood poverty pressure group. And I'd like to use this paper today to begin to rectify the latter point. And this is a paper of two halves. Firstly, it will give a chronological overview of the breadth of CPAG's activism since 1965. Then I'll consider more broadly changes to the pressure group model that CPAG are seen to be archetypical of, and consider why and the extent to which CPAG have proved resilient to the challenges poverty pressure groups have faced in more recent decades. Now, the founding of CPAG in 1965 reflected a coming together of several groups who'd separately recognised the failings of the welfare state in meeting the needs of poor families, most especially the families of the working poor. On the one hand, social workers who were seeing cases of families in need, and on the other, an activist approach to social policy amongst academics, many of whom, but not all, had connections to the LSE and the group working with Richard Titmuss. Meetings initiated by Harriet Wilson, a Quaker social worker noted for her work with poor families in Cardiff, and a member of the Quaker Social and Economic Affairs Committee, brought many of those concerned together in 1965 to hear Brian Abel-Smith speak on the research he and Peter Townsend were engaged in, which would be published as The Poor and the Poorest. This provided the empirical basis for the broad concern about the plight of poor families. Adroit use of the media in the run-up to Christmas 1965 and a petition to the Prime Minister Harold Wilson announced the launch of the group to the public. Now, Harriet Wilson, on recalling this moment, noted that they were especially concerned about the failure to mention legislation around family property in the 1964 Queen's speech, and that they might consider setting up, quote, an interest group for those of us who are specifically interested and concerned about poverty. And I see this in two ways: as an organisation that might organise and encourage research, and that might act as a lobby. So CPAG was, from the outset, conceived in Fabian terms, to achieve change, specifically in relation to family allowances, through research, education and persuasion. CPAG was the main organisation campaigning for family allowances, and from 1979 child benefits, and they saw these as the most effective mechanism for reducing family poverty without impacting work incentives, and to help cope with the problem of family wages being too low to support the larger family. As the previous timeline identified, this was not an easy or quick campaign to win, and child benefit was only finally fully established in 1979. Family allowances were felt to be politically difficult, even amongst a sympathetic Labour administration. A vote loser with the transfer of money from the wallet to the purse that was caused by a reduction in tax allowances. David Donaldson, the former chair of the Supplementary Benefits Commission, recalled recently a trip to a Welsh mining community. And he said, "The miners, who are militant and radical in their industrial politics and very devoted trade unionists, would say, 'Don't agree with family allowances, it's paying for other men's pleasures.' It was a coarse and explicit rejection of the whole idea." This is also reflective of David Bull's experience as a CPAG branch member in the 60s, campaigning for family allowances. Quote, "They were so angry with me for advocating family allowances. I would say the angriest groups were women's institutes and middle-aged men in the Labour Party. I remember soon after I came down here to Eastern Labour Party, and a guy saying, a man should only have the number of children he can afford." Alongside campaigns around family allowances, welfare rights work became an integral part of CPAG. This was initially sparked by Tony Lines, the group's first secretary, and he provided guidance as to how to conduct benefit tribunal appeals. During the 1970s, under the directorship of Frank Field, the organisation built on its heritage. The National Group appointed a lawyer and set up what became known as the Citizens' Rights Office, or CRO. The CRO initially was an advisory service for all, but gradually moved to become a secondary advisory service and the provider of a range of hugely influential welfare rights guides that are still the main source today of information about benefit calculations for local welfare rights advisors and CABs, amongst others. The legal team at CPAG have subsequently undertaken many significant test cases which have drawn attention to inequities in aspects of social security policy and delivery. In the 1970s, CPAG campaigned against the wage stop, against the cohabitation rule, on the cost of education, and two new means-tested benefits, family income supplement and the new rent and rate rebate scheme. The welfare rights side of the group grew significantly and can be overlooked in policy-focused assessments of the group, but it has provided the foundations for CPAG's credibility on issues of social security. In 1981, Suzanne McGregor noted that, quote, "The officials of CPAG probably know as much or more about poverty and the workings of the present system of social security as any politician or civil servant." This early work nationally on rights elided with a movement towards the setting up of branches, a number of which span out of university social policy departments, with academics galvanised by the activist approach that the poor and the poorest exemplified. Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Essex, York, Bristol and Oxford were some of the earliest branches, and in 1968 the first welfare rights stalls were being manned to provide advice on benefit entitlement. And this work, alongside the wide range of local campaigns, publications and media engagements, gave CPAG influence locally, as well as supplementing what the national group was doing. For many branches, it was the welfare rights work that became central to their activities. Links with social work professionals were also strong. At branch level, many social workers became members, and regular columns published in Social Work Today and New Society, such as one entitled In Your Client's Benefit, helped guide and encourage social workers to become stronger advocates for their clients. And a recent paper by Jane Tunstall has highlighted many of the ways in which this work has been supportive in the evolution of social work practice and provided welfare rights knowledge and training, and also how CPAG and BASWA, or the British Association of Social Workers, have worked together at both a local and a national level on issues such as the 1975 Children's Act. Alongside these many activities, the emphasis on improved family allowances was not lost sight of. Amidst much political manoeuvring, publication of leaked documents, and through skillful use of wider alliances in the media, CPAG can be credited with being involved in the final achievement of the full introduction of child benefit in 1979. If the achievement of the 1970s was the creation of child benefit, the achievement in the 1980s was a dogged campaign to ensure its retention as a universal benefit in a political climate much more challenging. A combination of intensive lobbying amongst supportive groups of Conservative MPs, Conservative women's groups, most notably the influential Conservative Women's National Committee, and then in 1985 the setting up of the Save Child Benefit Coalition, Saved Child Benefit, and the benefit was uprated during the Major administration. As the journalist Robin Pawley of the FT noted, quote, "Thatcher simply could not stomach the anticipated reaction from the middle classes and backbench MPs. CPAG's vigorous campaign, joined by a number of women's groups and targeted on moderate Conservatives, proved successful." During this decade, under its new director Ruth Lister, CPAG also led the charge in challenging punitive changes to the social security system, most especially the foul reforms of the mid-1980s, the social fund and later the poll tax. The early 1990s saw campaigns against the stigmatising rhetoric of ministers in John Major's administration. The surprise announcement by Major on becoming Prime Minister that he was uprating child benefit was a result of his conviction that this was the best policy to alleviate family poverty, a conviction that he put down to CPAG's careful lobbying over many previous years. And Ruth Lister recalled that at an NCBO event, John Major stated, quote, "I understand, and it was CPAG that taught me why child benefit was important." Nonetheless, they still struggled against benefit changes which were increasingly discriminatory against lone parents, the disabled and the young unemployed, and there were a significant voice protesting against the failings of the Child Support Agency. The new Labour government delivered a significant boost to their campaigns with Tony Blair's 1999 speech at Toynbee Hall, which announced the historic aim of ending child poverty within a generation. This was followed up with the 2010 Child Poverty Act, which enshrined this ambition in legislation. The new Labour years saw the institution of the End Child Poverty Coalition, which CPAG have hosted since 2010, and this wide-ranging coalition has proved to be a successful vehicle for holding the government to account on issues relating to child poverty. However, in 2013, child benefit was clawed back from higher-rate taxpayers, and CPAG once again faced a tough struggle against increased means testing and conditionality. Despite the numerous challenges to social security under both the coalition government and the new Conservative administration, CPAG has managed to achieve some policy wins, such as the recent test case on the bedroom tax and the retention of the child poverty measure. As Professor Jonathan Bradshaw recounted of these more recent policy wins, CPAG has a very good relationships with backbench MPs from all parties. There is the all-party child poverty group, and there are various family groups that CPAG goes with. CPAG did most of the key briefing for the Welfare Reform and Work Bill and poverty measurement stuff, and the defeat in the House of Lords is thanks to CPAG briefing. We maintain relationships with Parliament and the press. Thus the threads of CPAG influence, sometimes imperceptibly, are spread widely. As Pete Olcott concluded in 2006, the resources supporting CPAG have enabled it to survive as an influential pressure group for 40 years, and its broad-based strategies have permitted it to maintain pressure for reform across a range of fronts, whilst it has adapted to the changing complexion of political power and policy debate. Now, in 1987, Whitley and Wynyard argued in their study of the poverty lobby that it was very overdue for three reasons. Firstly, it was the first overview of the entire lobby since it came into existence in the 1960s. Secondly, that it was arguably one of the most important lobbies in British politics. And finally, despite the term the poverty lobby being widely used, the lobby itself had not been clearly defined. Now, this book was actually the last overview of the poverty lobby, and the above issues are arguably even more pertinent today. Whiteley Wynyard identified a core group of 14 organisations they considered to be part of the poverty lobby, defined as national groups, whose focus was on lobbying for income maintenance policies for the poor. They also claim a wider definition of poverty pressure groups, as many other NGOs do at points lobby on the above issues, albeit they could be more sporadic in their interventions. Now, in 2016, of the core group of 14 identified by Whitley and Wynyard, only 4 appear to be still in existence. I'll slightly qualify that because I have been looking into a lot of them, and some of them seem to have local branches or that don't have a national presence, etc. The definition of some of these groups, and they've moved on, merged, etc. But from what I can see, about 4 still have some sort of presence. And this begs some important historical questions. What has happened to the poverty lobby in the intervening 30 years? Why have CPAG survived and others not? And what might the future hold for what was considered a significant part of the political and social policy landscape? And historical analysis of poverty pressure groups is very thin on the ground. They do feature obviously in overviews of NGOs such as the various works by Hilton et al. And there are some very useful new studies of disability organisations, most notably the work by Gareth Millward and Jamel Hampton. And there is Tanya Evans' very helpful overview in Nick Crowdson's NGOs in Contemporary Britain. For the purpose of this analysis, obviously I'm focusing on CPAG as representative of this model, but I do feel more comparative work of the whole lobby is absolutely necessary to give a wider context to the argument I'm about to make. So that the poverty pressure group model has evolved and is arguably less influential is taken as read by those working within the sector as well as the literature. And there are 2 main reasons people cite for this. Firstly, that the ideological context has shifted, meaning politicians and the public are less receptive to their policies, most especially universal state solutions to poverty. And secondly, a feeling that their perceived elitist favouring methods are now less well regarded and therefore less effective. Now, both of these arguments there are undoubtedly some elements of truth, but the case of CPAG suggests that these points need to be interrogated more thoroughly, and doing so may point to some of the reasons why CPAG have been more resilient in what is clearly a challenging political context. Universal state redistribution remains a central demand of CPAG. If you were to examine statements from CPAG at their launch, compared with more recent material, there is an absolute consistency in their message. They argued that increases in family allowances were essential, as they were universal, so take-up was high, paid to the mother, and therefore went directly into the family budget, and also, unlike means-tested benefits, did not cause work disincentives. And CPAG have also consistently stressed the moral case for family allowances. They argue that society had a role to play in supporting families, as children were the future of the nation, and that family allowances represented a horizontal redistribution of income from those without children to those with. Now, the constancy of this message can be seen across the decades, alongside their opposition to means testing and the residualisation of the welfare state. In 1984, as part of their submission to the Social Security review process, commonly known as the Fowler Reviews after the then Secretary of State, they argued, quote, "The challenge facing us now, therefore, is to get across to as many people as possible the principled and practical arguments against means testing and for a universal child benefit. At stake are some of the fundamental principles of the post-war social security system, which could be jettisoned for a residual and divisive system of means-tested relief for the poor." 10 years later, in 1994, Peter Townsend noted similarly, "In the UK, the universality is at a crossroads. The problem is not that benefits and services should be made more selective, but that their role should be greatly improved to complement and offset modern market forces." And in 2016, Ruth Lister commented that, quote, "There are certain policy positions that are almost in the DNA of the group. Child benefit and a more universal approach are two of them. I suppose it's always possible that one day someone will come along as a new director and completely say this is old-fashioned, we have to review our policy stance. For me that would be very sad. But obviously I'm partly hanging on to that traditional position of CPAG, as I think probably most of the people you've talked to are." The changing political consensus context has significantly impinged on the reception of this position. The apparent consensus over the welfare state was already under threat in the 1950s. Moreover, even under the Wilson administration, budgetary pressures were causing cutbacks. CPAG came into being to challenge such cutbacks and argue for comprehensive services. And whilst for the most part the government was sympathetic to their demands, economic pressures were considerable, and so progress somewhat limited. By the late 1970s, however, a more explicit threat to the Beveridge settlement from neoliberal thinkers and American social policy gurus such as Charles Murray were inflecting everyday political debate and policy. Mrs. Thatcher's opposition to a universal child benefit can be seen in her comment in 1978, quote, "The larger the child benefit, the more people look to the state to support the children for whom they are responsible and whom they brought into the world." Echoing this view, one of the panel members of the Social Security Reviews in 1984 commented to CPAG, quote, "Why should someone who consciously decided not to have children expect to pay for others who decide to have a particular number of children? I've also always thought that if one reaches a decision to bring a child into the world, one takes responsibility, including financial responsibility for the situation." The fall of Margaret Thatcher might have appeared to herald in a more one-nation Toryism, but beyond the unfreezing and raising of child benefit, the increased conditionality and stigmatising for some groups continued apace. Moreover, questions have been raised from across the political spectrum. David Owen in 1986, and he'd previously been a very keen supporter of CPAG, noted, quote, "If CPAG continues to believe poverty can be alleviated with universality as the key yardstick by which any reform will be judged, then I can only see poverty continuing." Kerry Oppenheim, who was CPAG's research officer, noted in 1994 of the Commission for Social Justice that CPAG's issues for universality and redistribution were associated with being old-fashioned or now have a left label. And the difficulty in arguing publicly for these views were also significant, as Fran Bennett, CPAG's director, commented in 1993. It would be good if one of the main newspapers gave space to the universalist views rather than running the anti-arguments all the time. Whilst New Labour brought in many positive social policies, their privileging of means-tested benefits, prioritising work as a route out of poverty, and trying to do good by stealth, meant that the positive case for universality in the social security system continued to be undermined. And Robert Page has recently summarised David Cameron's approach as progressive conservatism. However, whilst more socially liberal in some respects, the increased emphasis on the role of individuals and communities in meeting welfare needs continues to undercut the role of the state. Unsurprisingly, with public debate consistently emphasising the fairness of means testing and the perception that there is waste and fraud within the social security system, there has been a decline in support for spending on benefits, which the above graph indicates. However, in one area, CPAG could be said to have made a difference. Alongside, and possibly because of their more assertive campaigning, there was a marked upsurge in public support for child benefit, and a public which had in previous decades been sceptical about child benefits. In 1993, Peter Townsend considered that, quote, in the late 1960s, surveys showed family allowances were not as wholly popular as CPAG would have liked. It was partly because of the work of CPAG over the 60s and 70s that it then got established as a kind of British institution. It is particularly entrenched in the minds of many women today because of their entitlement to at least a small amount of income. I think if you look, there's been a marked change in its popularity. And this was noted in 1992 by Hartley Dean and Peter Taylor Gooby, who noted that, quote, child benefit has risen rapidly up the priority order in recent years, indicating widespread concerns at the freezing of the benefit in 1987. And the 2014 British Social Attitude Survey, which I've put a summary of above, reported similar findings, with an almost doubling of those making child benefit a priority for extra spending between 1984 and 2014. So CPAG had, it would seem, not only saved child benefit, but also encouraged a marked increase in its popularity. So, to conclude on this section, CPAG have been consistent in their support for universalism and are perhaps almost unique in continuing to focus on a policy platform that argues for this. They've had some successes, notably with attitudes towards child benefit. However, under the current ideological drift, it is a difficult position to maintain, and possibly, for other poverty pressure groups, was one they were unable to sustain. That CPAG have been able to do so can only be understood by looking at the wider organisation and the range of methods that they've used to support their policies. So if one argument for the decline of poverty pressure groups is that the policy context shifted and undermined their arguments, a second issue has been to question the pressure group model and methods. Now, there's no doubt that expertise has been a significant part of CPAG's and other pressure groups' successes and influence. Indeed, as Peter Hall has noted, the complexity of social security has meant that, quote, it is not an area in which spontaneous action by concerned or aggrieved citizens can have much direct influence, because although the broad issues are simple, the detail is not. You need expertise to be able to conceive of solutions rather than just campaign against injustices. And for many, CPAG's expertise had previously been considered one of their key strengths. Whiteley and Woodyard noted that, quote, our survey evidence shows that it has been accepted by civil servants and politicians. In addition, decision makers and activists in other pressure groups thought CPAG was a highly successful lobbying organisation. If Adam Lent, who admittedly was not primarily looking at poverty groups, The 1950s and 60s were a universe dominated by moderate values, polite lobbying and elitist structures. And Peter Beresford has been critical of the CPAG model and argues, quote, "This model has tended to ignore issues of power because it has rested on the unstated power of its proponents, socially and politically privileged people from the Webbs to Peter Townsend and Julian Le Grand. This top-down elitist approach to social policy, with its cult of the expert, has dominated UK social policy practice and thinking for many years." Recent historical research has argued for more complexity in assessing pressure groups. Chris Moores, in looking at the National Council of Civil Liberties, should suggest an in-between space for some groups between a policy-led pressure group and new cultural and rights-based activism. And Virginia Berridge and Alex Mould have gone farther and argued for in-between spaces within organisations such as ASH, or they describe as, quote, "radical politics pursued in non-radical styles." Indeed, what these latter historians have emphasised is the need to historicise voluntarism in a way that recognises greater complexity. And these ideas are important, as I believe we need to consider CPAG as more than just an elitist organisation, and that by doing so we can begin to unpick some of the reasons why it has been resilient, even in a much harsher policy environment. Firstly, CPAG have remained independent of government funding, relying mainly on self-generated publication income, and therefore more able to be challenging than the moderate values and polite lobbying discussed above. As Alison Garland, the current CPAG Chief Executive, commented recently, "If you take the lid off Bernardo's, Children's Society or For Children, you'll find them all doing the same things. They're running children's programmes, children's centres, nurseries or whatever under contract, whereas we are not responsible to government, so we do not have that conflict, if you like, about not wanting to upset government. We are therefore still freer." And this freedom to act has been essential for CPAG's policy successes, from the abolition of wage stock, challenges to the cohabitation rule, leadership of the poll tax petition campaign, to recent policy wins over child tax credits. CPAG have been a significant force for change, and they've done so at points under the glare of publicity and been unafraid to court controversy. The publication in 1970 of their pre-budget manifesto, later released as a press release with the title "Poor Get Poorer Under Labour," was a document that many felt lost Labour the election, but this was emblematic of their preparedness to take risks. Further, their most significant policy win, the introduction of child benefit, involved a risky expose that precipitated, with trade union and MPs' help, a government U-turn. And in 1986, Frankfield noted, "Our luckiest break came in the leaking of those cabinet papers on child benefit. That child benefit is paid today owes a great deal to that brave act." And he's also argued that it was CPAG's expertise in spotting changes to the 1978 budget and CPAG's known ruthlessness for seeing a campaign through to its conclusion that ensured the introduction of the benefit. Now, a significant factor in these successes was also CPAG's ability to generate media publicity. And this might not seem unusual. Gaining media coverage was a feature of many pressure groups. CPAG, however, managed to strike a balance with exposés that were significantly challenging of government and yet remain accepted within Whitehall and Westminster. That this was a departure from the original conception of lobbying can be seen in a letter from Fred Philp, the first chair of CPAG in 1970. Quote, "I was not very happy about Frank's letter to the PM. The basic arguments are sound, but I doubt it does much good to question Heath's integrity so directly. The heading, 'Has Heath ratted on the poor?' may win the applause of Tuesday's meeting, but it does not enhance the reputation of CPAG as a responsible body concerned to press a carefully reasoned case." But such exposés were important to CPAG and could generate policy shifts. In one example, in 1983, the EC were told, quote, "We will leak some documents about a pilot scheme to send certain contributing benefit GIRO checks by second-class post. Following a story in The Guardian, the DHSS quickly backed down and said they would not go ahead with the scheme." And in the past, CPAG were also able to gain exposure in more popular media channels, educating and spreading support for their arguments. Frank Field has recalled the importance of the Jimmy Young programme in making contact with the millions of people who, because they're at home, are usually out of the labour force. and the archive contains many letters from individuals to Frank Field because of these programmes. At the local level, branches were adept at using local radio, press, and in some instances local television stations as campaigning vehicles. And the campaign for child benefit generated significant coverage in women's magazines such as Woman and Cosmopolitan. And again, there are numerous letters from mothers from a range of income brackets who expressed their concerns over the impact of the loss of benefit. And even in 1997, it was noted that, apparently, according to the NCBO, CPAG had received more press coverage in the run-up to the general election than any other voluntary organisation, and this coverage included a successful test case. CPAG still achieved good levels of support from outlets such as The Guardian. However, popular media portrayals towards benefits and poverty have shifted, as Alison Garland recalls. In the 80s, you also had a press that was incredibly hostile to claimants. I can remember the Scroungers World Tours. I think they filmed a couple of claimants in Mexico at a football match wearing Social Security World Tour t-shirts. And this emphasis has only been exacerbated by contemporary programmes such as Benefit Street. And these shifts have meant that CPAG's ability to gain positive mainstream coverage today is more constrained, to say the least. Another example of CPAG's preparedness to publicly challenge policy has been their use of legal test cases, which even recently they continue to have success with. From the 1970s, they used CRO cases to feed material to the legal department, which would support national campaigning. Whilst many test cases do not set legal precedents, they're a significant form of publicity, and in some instances can be significant in moderating legislation. Throughout their history, these cases have been significant. In 1996, it was noted that David Thomas had won an important case on the statutory sick pay for casual workers in the Sally Brown case. And only last year, quote, the country's highest court, the Supreme Court, has ruled that the government discriminated against a disabled woman and her husband and a severely disabled child who needs overnight care through the implementation of bedroom tax. CPAG therefore have a history of blending policy expertise with political action beyond that which is considered being part of an insider pressure group, and this has enabled them to sustain their campaigns. What the archives also reveal is the breadth of the group's activism. Stephen Hatch was dismissive of CPAG branches, noting that they are associated not with the presence of poor families, but with the location of universities. However, branches did offer outlets for grassroots activism. The CPAG branch in Islington noted, quote, our main concern has been to become known within Islington as a body concerned with people's rights, and thus a great part of the early work has been meeting active people and groups within the borough. The object is community action rather than casework. The intention in every aspect of our outlook is to avoid being experts to whom people come for advice. We want to spread information and knowledge around the community. And it is often access to information that is vital. Copies of branch newsletters in the archive have articles from the unemployed and working class members. So not all CPAG branches were populated with the professional middle classes. Indeed, several were set up by those in poverty. The Ashington branch was set up by a single parent who was a member of the Rainbow One-Parent Group, and after a discussion of the social security changes in the late 1980s, quote, it was unanimously felt we were losing a little bit more of the little control we had over our own lives. She decided to do something about it, found out about CPAG and set up a branch. A different form of local action was found in the 1980s when they had a network of local supporters. And in 1988, the EC were told that, quote, there are now over 400 constituency contacts covering over 300 constituencies. Contacts now receive a model press release, which they're encouraged to adapt for use with local media. It seems that many are doing so, and thus helping to raise CPAG's profile throughout the country. So expertise as construed in the CPAG model could be more than top-down, national and academic, and it could be more radical, inclusive of local activism, and draw in a range of supporters. This blending of policy, publicity, legal challenges and branch activism was historically successful for CPAG, but maintaining this breadth has proved more difficult. CPAG are not the only organisation that found it hard to sustain branches, and whilst they were more successful than other groups in managing them, the branch network was finally closed in the early 2000s. and have also struggled to achieve positive media support on poverty issues, especially in a popular press that is in the current climate difficult. And these changes have narrowed what was once quite an expansive group, limiting their public exposure, but is reflective of the wider trends that amid the gradual constriction of the poverty lobby. So to conclude, the poverty lobby, I would argue, as conceived by Whitley and Wynyard, does not exist in its original form. The host of national groups, whose focus was on lobbying for income maintenance policies for the poor, has been superseded by a range of large organisations for whom lobbying for income maintenance is only one, and in some cases a rather small part of their remit. Hilton et al., in their study Politics of Expertise, concluded with the view that NGOs have drifted to the moderate centre, away from an earlier radicalism, and that, quote, NGOs have demonstrated a commitment to individualism as an underlying ideology. In other words, collective solutions or answers which require collective intervention by states have often been sidelined and individual action promoted. CKG, I would argue, have remained remarkably true to their roots, both in terms of their objects and methods. They continue to support the universal child benefit and challenge the residualisation of the welfare state through campaigns and test cases that have been more than an irritant to both coalition and current Conservative administrations. From the perspective of 2017, it is difficult to say what the future might hold for CPAG and any future form of the poverty lobby. However, CPAG continue to be a respected and important voice in the ongoing fight against child poverty. And I'll conclude on this note with the thoughts of a long-standing CPAG member, Professor Adrian Sinfield, which reflects the determination of CPAG to remain true to their founding principles and practices. Quote, "It is astonishing the extent to which CPAG is playing a key role in keeping that perception of poverty going. It's extremely hard work. It's keeping alive the broader issue of some form of universal benefits and not simply making more efficient means testing at the bottom. The fact that they put out pamphlets on child benefit and so on is not accidental, because this is a key way of keeping this issue of equal benefits open. I think this is absolutely central." Thank you.